The epistle appointed for the fourth Sunday after Trinity begins with the 18th verse of the 8th chapter of St. Paul's letter to the Romans. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together till now. Not only that, but we also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. Here endeth the epistle.
Thanks be to God.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Religious freedom and our founding. Quoting from what we heard from St. Paul this morning, the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. From the bondage of corruption to glorious liberty. St. Paul is talking about what's going to happen at the end of the world, but I would suggest that the imagery he uses gives us a window into what drove the colonization of America and the founding of these United States. Many people who took part in that historical process believed they were on a pilgrimage from the bondage of corruption to glorious liberty. My grade school and high school education in American history suggested the religious roots of the colonial experience. Especially at Thanksgiving time, we learned about the brave Pilgrims and Puritans who came to North America to escape the horrible religious persecution that prevailed in England in the early 17th century. It was only much later on, after I'd found the Anglican Church, that I realized that much of what the Pilgrims and Puritans were trying to escape consisted of our beloved Book of Common Prayer and, Anglican bishops. That irony points up several things that seem true to me about the consideration of religion in early America. The picture, like most historical pictures, is more muddy than it is crystal clear. One is going to be, particularly concerned about his own group. In our case, Anglicans, and especially the Virginia Anglicans, and anyone who studies this potentially volatile subject is likely to come up with information that confirms his or her own prejudices about religion and church-state relations, especially in light of the rhetoric about religious liberty which tends to surround the colonization and the revolution. I think it's important to note that established churches were the rule rather than the exception in colonial America. Established churches were ones which all citizens, regardless of religious affiliation, paid taxes to support. New England, following these freedom-seeking Pilgrims and Puritans, tended to establish their own brand of congregationalism. In Virginia and the Carolinas, the established church was Anglican. Anglican clergy were paid through a tax on, of all politically incorrect things, tobacco. Of course, the members of the Church of England who came here to America were not looking particularly for religious freedom. They were looking for gold and other sources of wealth. And no matter what we think about the niceties of church-state relations now, I don't know of anyone who advocates overt tax support for Christianity in general, let alone for a particular denomination. But that was the situation for most of the colonies on the eve of the Revolution. After Yorktown, the various states moved toward disestablishment at different rates of speed. In the long run, as we know, a pattern of complete disestablishment tended to prevail both in the states and in the federal government and the Constitution. The key figures in that process were two Virginia Anglicans, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Now to the great questions. Were the Founding Fathers Christians? And was the United States intended originally to be a Christian nation? This is certainly an issue in which one's current prejudices are likely to shape one's answer about what was going on 250 years ago. It was the clear intention of the American Revolution to establish a republican form of government, one where effective power rested not with kings and noblemen and bishops, but with elected representatives. In most places in the world, republican political ideals tended to go hand in hand with hostility to the church. France and the French Revolution being perhaps the most glaring example, and America was an exception to that pattern. The fact that religion was a factor in people's coming here in the first place created a climate which tended to foster the fusion of republican and religious values. The clear victory over Roman Catholic France in the French and Indian War also helped. The Founding Fathers believed that liberty could be maintained and a republic could work only if the citizens were virtuous. De Tocqueville concluded that the preservation of America's traditional religion is one of the most important tasks of democratic statesmanship. Indeed, he went so far as to say religion should be considered the first of America's political institutions, and even that it is necessary for Americans to maintain Christianity at all cost. The institution best suited to inculcating virtue was and is the church. So religion and churches had and have a necessary role to play in making this political experiment work. Most of the fathers also thought that virtuous liberty was promoted best in a free market rather than an established religious context. I'm far more certain the Founding Fathers thought religion and church were a positive good than I am that Jefferson, for example, would have signed his name to the Nicene Creed. But no matter how we conceive the history of the colonial period, it led to a society in which we can freely sign our names to the Nicene Creed. So, let us resolve to use wisely and to spread the glorious liberty of the children of God. Amen.
Amen.